Hey, how's it going, guys? Hope you're all doing well. So I thought I'd talk about Deontay Wilder. I haven't talked about him too much on this channel, but I thought I'd bring him up. And, I thought I'd talk about if he's overrated or not because, a lot of people, now that he's lost to Tyson Fury, a lot of people are calling him like a hype job or, this fraud and, oh, he was overrated and all that stuff. So I thought I'd give my thoughts on it. So, um, me personally, I was actually like at one point like a fan of Deontay Wilder. You know what I mean? Because I thought he had like a bit like a lot of potential to be like a very like the best of his era. You know what I mean? And not just the best of his era, but he had the potential to go down as like an all-time great in my opinion. But it was sort of like after the first Tyson Fury fight, I got kind of sick of his antics. You know what I mean? Like when he was saying things like, "Oh yeah, I want a body on my record," or "Oh yeah, I would have definitely have beaten Mike Tyson or and Muhammad Ali or something like that." And also when he was trashing AJ when AJ lost to Andy Ruiz Jr. and he was saying, "Oh, AJ's a coward. He's, you know what I mean? He's this. He's oh, I would have been embarrassed if I lost." And then a fight later, when a few fights later he fights Tyson Fury. It's the exact same thing happens to him, except much worse in my opinion, right? But regardless, like obviously with this video, I'm gonna try and keep it unbiased. But the point is that I'm just I've sort of just I used to be a fan of his, but after like his excuses, his antics, and just things he's just said, I've kind of like lost. I don't know. I've not really been too much of a fan of his. But anyway, in terms of his status as a boxer, so I think I will say this. I don't think he's necessarily like the most overrated boxer in history. However, I do think that there are certain things that people like to, sort of rate him too highly on. And I'll get into that. So, I think in terms of, his boxing ability, I think a lot of people know that he is not a good, like, he's not a good technical and fundamental boxer, right? I think, most people can agree on that, because he's a guy who swings wildly, looks like he's about to fall into the ropes every time he, throws a right hand or is like looping, hook or right hand and stuff, or overhand right, And it's like he's obviously not a very good technical fighter, as we've seen in the past. He was slipping around all over the place when he fought Archer Spilka, right? He's been knocked down by guys like Harold Skoniers and he allegedly got knocked down by Dustin Nichols as well, right? He got rocked by Eric Molina. You know what I mean? So it's like he's not the best fundamental boxer. But I think the thing with me is I think people know that, right? I don't think people are like labeling him as, oh, he's the best boxer we've seen since Muhammad Ali and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like in terms of power, yeah, he's certainly a hard puncher, right? Especially we're mostly with that right hand. You know what I mean? But in terms of his boxing ability, I think people know that he is not a good fundamental and technical fighter, right? Now, so in terms of that, I don't think people overrate him on that. I think people know that, you know what I mean? Know that he's not in terms of which aspect he is overrated in. I do think that him being labeled as the hardest puncher in boxing history is I think what people overrate him on. Now, there could be an argument that he has the hardest right hand in heavyweight boxing history. But when we talk about puncher, right, we don't just mean one hand, one punch, you know what I mean, that you rely on, right? That's like being just one dimensional. When we talk about puncher, we talk about having the ability to knock out guys with hooks and uppercuts as well as right hands, and even like having a good powerful jab, right? So, and Wilder doesn't, let's be honest. I'm not trying to trash Wilder, but look, he doesn't have the hardest left hook, right? He doesn't have the hardest uppercut. You know what I mean? He doesn't have the hardest jab. I will say that he does have a hard jab, but in terms of him being a puncher, the hardest puncher, I just don't think that's a true statement. And I think people label him as being the hardest puncher, and they say, oh, he's got power in both hands and stuff. It's like, no, he doesn't. He has a lot of power in that right hand, right? That's when you say hardest puncher, you can say the hardest punch, but not the hardest puncher, period. You know what I mean? Another thing I think people overrate him on as well, is when people say that, he would beat like all-time greats like Foreman, Ali, Lewis as well. Look, it's possible, but I mean, when we look at Ali, I think Ali's footwork and defense was just too good for Wilder, in my opinion. I mean, sure, if Wilder did land that right hand on Ali, he would have definitely rocked Ali, in my opinion, but I don't think that. I think Ali's defense and everything was just too good for someone like Wilder to land on, right? So, and the thing is, people say, oh, he's knocked out every single guy he's faced and stuff like that. Yeah, but I mean, you look at his level of opposition, and he's not had a good win out of the 41 fights or whatever it is he's been in. He's not had a good win on his record, right? I know I made that video like where I, showed you guys how Tyson Fury, when he fought Wilder, got a ridiculously long count, and not just the first fight, but the second fight as well. Where Mark Lyson was like 1, 2, 3, and then stopping mid count and saying over there, and then when Fury gets up, he's like, put your hands up. Okay, now walk over here. Okay, now come here, and basically giving him a whole like 15 to 20 seconds to recover from that knockdown. He gave him 15 seconds or something, or even more, just to recover from that knockdown. You know what I mean? Which was like a slap behind the head, as well, or a slap behind the ear, excuse me. You know what I mean? So if you wanted to count that as a win on Wilder's record, then okay, fine. But it's not on, for one, it's not on his record. You know what I mean? As an official win, right? And two, you look at the other fighters he's faced. Who has he fought that's a good name on his record, right? I can't think of anyone. The only guy I can think of is Bermane Stiverne, just because he was a champion. But look, he was a vacant world title. He won a vacant world title. You know what I mean? That I believe Vitaly vacated. I could be wrong on that, but Vitaly Klitschko, right? And then a fight later. But the point is, there's a fight later. A fight later, Stiverne goes to fight Deontay Wilder, and then he loses the belt, right? And then he gets knocked out in the second fight, in a fight he basically just didn't care about. He just showed up and just got knocked down within the first round. It was so strange, that second fight. You know what I mean? So if I had to say Wilder had any exceptional win or outstanding win, if any, then I would say maybe Stiverne. But like I said, I still don't consider that to be a good win on Deontay Wilder's record. And as far as Luis Ortiz goes, I mean, Luis Ortiz was always this overrated fighter whose career consisted of fighting nothing but bums. And Wilder kind of got him at the later stage of his career when he was older and stuff, and having heart issues and stuff, and you know what I mean. And even then, it's both guys. I didn't think that was both guys. Because for one, Wilder got rocked in that fight, and Ortiz gave him a very tough fight, and two, Ortiz got dropped with a jab in that fight. You know what I mean? In the second round. And Ortiz, like I said, he hasn't had a good win on his record. Even against low-level opposition, he was still going the distance with guys like Malik Scott, Travis Kaufman, Christian Hammer, and so on. You know what I mean? And he got knocked down recently with a jab by Charles Martin, right? And I know Ortiz is obviously past his prime and stuff. You know what I mean? But still, I mean, Martin is also kind of past it, right? And he's not. I mean, there's been older champions in the past. So I don't know. It's just very I don't know. His record, I think, I would say is overrated as well. Out of the 41 fights he's been in or whatever, or 40-something fights he's been in, he has, half a good win on his record or whatever, right? And, you know what I mean? He hasn't, and then he gets lost, and then he loses to Tyson Fury, twice. So, in terms of Deontay Wilder, do I think he's overrated? To an extent. Do I think he's the most overrated boxer in history, though? No, right? I don't think, I think people I think there's a lot more. There are many more fighters in boxing who are overrated. You know what I mean? I can think of one example I can think of is maybe Andre Ward, right? Um, Another one I can think of is maybe who else? Is overrated? Um, Javante Davis, right? I mean, yeah, those guys are better boxers than Deontay Wilder, but in terms of how people value them and like the status that people put them on, I think is overrated. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to even talk about that right now. But so the point is that is Wilder overrated? Yes. Is he the most overrated? No. And we'll just leave it at that. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. I'd like to hear your thoughts and comments or opinions in the comments below. Um, and that's that. Hope you guys have a good day, night, wherever you are. And yeah, take care and peace.